Again by Green. Down it comes here again. We've got Timmy Watson. The snap for goals. It's coming around enough. It is. What a beautiful goal by Timmy Watson. That's goal number 4. It's brought the Essendon crowd to life.
Gets it across to Watson. Now the member stand comes alive as Timmy runs the boundary. Flicks one in towards goal. It's coming back. What a goal!
Watson looking for a free, but he's got the ball anyway. Short pass by Watson. Up to full forward. Danaher, well fought by Bruce Gould, who's playing a fantastic game. Watson in the meantime has taken by Watson. The Essendon fans roar. Watson shot at goal. Is a boomer. Essendon running rings around their opponents at the moment. They're doing as they like. Watson steadies. Turns on a Tripoli bit. A long shot at goal by Watson is another one. 5 goals to Watson. It is a bar.
He's the darling of Bomber fans and opposition supporters alike. But away from the spotlight of football, it's here Tim Watson loves to escape. His country retreat in Gippsland, where he relaxes with his wife Susie and family. A country boy from birth, the bush provides a great escape from the pressures of AFL football. The boy from Dimboola has found his place in the country, on the banks of Lake Glenmaggie.
In my whole football career, what I wanted to get out of football was somewhere to, like a farm or somewhere in the country, because I'd enjoyed my life, my growing up years in the country, and I wanted to have a family. I wanted to have a big family, and I wanted to have my children enjoy the country life as well. And I suppose, when you're sort of playing football and you're making money as a young fellow, you're sort of trying to decide what to do with your money, and that's one of the things I wanted to do, and it's been a great thing because we often get down here and spend good quality family time together, and we're away from everything. We're away from people, and it's just a nice, quiet, idyllic place.
But go back more than 300 league games and Tim Watson hadn't heard of Glenmaggie. He was at home in the Wimmera honing his skills and dreaming of the big time in the big smoke.
I think that probably football started in our house at home. I had 2 older brothers, Mark and Larry, and they were obviously playing football before I was. And we used to play. I can remember playing in the hallway at home with rolled up socks, and in the backyard, in the front yard, out on the street. We lived across the road from the primary school too, and we used to go over there and play games on the oval there and in like any space we could really find. We used to put a football in a stocking and sort of practice, jumping up and taking the marks on the clothesline. But actually, I had a mate who used to live around the corner, and we used to go to his grandmother's place. She had a garage out the back with a tiled roof, and we used to throw the ball up onto the tiled roof, and it used to dribble back down. It used to hit the guttering and then spring up, and we'd practice taking speckies on each other's shoulders. So I probably tried to hone some marking skills then.
Players again goes for the short pass, and a magnificent mark comes out toward Watson with side bottoms there. Watson, a great mark.
And then towards the full forward zone. Watson's got the mark.
I think one of the things that always helped my football development was the fact that I played a lot of football in older age groups all the way through my junior years, so I never really played in a competition that I was a standout type player. When I played school football, I think I was in grade 3 or grade 4, and I was in the grade sort of 5 and 6 team, and then I went into high school and I was in grade 1, in Form 1, and I played in the senior football team. So there was always others that were better and physically bigger and stronger and more developed than what I was. And in hindsight, it was nothing that was ever planned, but I think in hindsight it was a great thing because it meant that the interest for me was always kept by the fact that I couldn't just sort of run around and do whatever I liked. A fellow by the name of Jack Green, who was the Essendon scout up around our area, he was often at the football, and he got to know my parents a bit, and if I ever knew that he was there, even when I was 12 or 13, I'd be desperate to get out onto the ground at half-time, just thinking that, perhaps he's sitting over there with a cup of tea and a scone and he might be watching, and perhaps that's how they pick kids to go down to play in Melbourne one day. So I think he knew our family. He'd been to our place a couple of times because Larry had already been there. And I played, when I was when I was 13, I went across to New Guinea in a Victorian representative side, and then when I was 14, I played in the under-15 Victorian side, and so I played for the Wimmera. Glenn Hawker was in that team. Mark Dreher, who played for Collingwood, then went to Adelaide. Stevie Wright, who played a lot of games for the Swans, and we played up in Sydney in that carnival, and that was really, I suppose, at that time, all the talent scouts from all the clubs were there watching that particular carnival, and I suppose Essendon became more interested or whatever after that carnival. I played centre half back, which was the first time in my whole junior days that I ever played in the back line, and I played centre half back, and we won. We beat South Australia in the final by 5 points, and it was a great carnival because the Victorians have always given away sort of 12 months or so in age to the other states to try and what they would say even up the competition, and so at 15 and 16 it can be an enormous difference in physical maturity between a 15-year-old or a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old, and that was a great win.
Essendon moved quickly, and it wasn't long before they were knocking on his Dimboola door with the most amazing offer to lure the 15-year-old to Melbourne.
Money just didn't enter into it, and it was, I think, they had to pay Dimboola a transfer fee, which was very heavy negotiation, and your local football side is hardly likely to make it so difficult that you're not going to be able to go and play in the VFL. And apart from that, at the time I'd received, I think it was when I played the Victorian side, I got an Adidas football bag, a pair of socks, and $20 to help with spending money up in Sydney. And which was, it's a mountain of money I used to do. I used to do a paper round for $5 a week. I thought, $20 at one time is not too bad. And then the following year when when I went to Essendon, then I got like a $25 a week allowance money, which made me the richest kid at high school by a long way. And but money never entered into it. I didn't sort of even consider having a contract until I'd been there for a few years. But times were very different. My parents were very concerned about where I was going to live when I went to Melbourne, and I remember the night, still very vividly when the Essendon people turned up, and they'd come to Dimboola on this Wednesday, really to the season had already started. It was 1 week old, and they'd arrived at Dimboola to sort out, the transfer from the Dimboola Football Club, and it was Kevin Egan, Barry Keane, who was a committeeman, and Ted Fordham, who was chairman of selectors. And they called in home, and I said, look, I'd love to go back to Melbourne. And so I basically went and got my bag packed, all my worldly possessions, which sort of filled half a suitcase. And my mum was very concerned that I didn't have any new school shoes, so I had to buy some new school shoes before I left. But she was very concerned about the fact that, where I was going to live, and she wanted me to be in a sort of a safe, secure family environment. And they assured my mother that that's the case. They had that all organised. And on this night, the Sullivans was very big in television. This is going back a long ways, but that was a big time show. And Tom was heading off to war, and I was heading off to Melbourne to play football. And my mum was crying, and I wasn't sure if she was crying because I was heading off to Melbourne to play football. Tom was heading off to the war, and she's still saying, look, are you sure you've got him a good family, that he's going to move into? And they said, yes, Mrs. Watson, everything's done, the deal's sweet, everything's under control, you don't need to worry. And so we hopped in the car, gone about 2 kilometres, and I said, where's the little bastard going to stay? And that was my introduction to football. And I ended up staying at Barry Keane's place for the first 3 months. He'd recently been divorced, and I guess he needed the company, and he had a big house in West Essendon, a big double-storey place. So I remember walking inside thinking, I've just made it, look at this. I mean, here I am in this beautiful big 2-storey house, and, there's going to be probably maids and servants and things like that, but they never appeared. In fact, he hardly ever appeared either, and I was left to sort of do my own washing and do my own cleaning and do my own cooking.
Did you ever find out from your mother if it was in fact Tom she was crying about, or was it her son leaving?
No, she was in fact crying because Tom had left.
But while Tom was going off to war, Tim was preparing for his first battle.
I remember it was about dusk and someone from the Sun came to take my photo, and I put on an Esalen jumper that I found inside and did a bit of a jog up the hill. And I woke up the next morning, I was pretty nervous, and I thought, well, I'll just sort of go through the page of the papers and just see whether this photo's in there. And I started back and turned the pages, and, not a cracker, and I thought, oh, God, it's not even in there. And so then I turned it, after I finished reading all the sports pages, I turned over the front to see what was actually happening in the world. And there was my picture on the front page, and I thought, if I hadn't been nervous enough at that point to actually sort of see yourself on the front page of the Sun thinking, this is a bigger deal than I actually thought it was.
I mean, it's a matter of his priorities. He's got to get his priorities right. I think as a youngster at school, he needs to realise that his education really comes before his football, because football, as you can well imagine, is has a very small lifespan. Most footballers, if they're lucky, they can play 10 years, I suppose, and that's it. And they've got to look to their career.
There's always something else to achieve, as you play. Like, I want to be part of a premiership side, and that's I reckon that's about the biggest thing every footballer aims to be, is part of a premiership side.
I can recall that when I first started, I was doing a trick at the time, and I was expected to do a lot more breaking into league football than I would expect him to do.
Oh, they treat me part as a team, but they joke and muck around a bit about, that the fact that I go to school and that sometimes,
Waste any time, and he's looking for Watson. Watson, the first game player for Essendon today.
Ironically, Tim's first senior game was against Richmond, the team he'd idolised as a kid.
For Essendon, it goes out towards young Watson on the outer side of the ground. Watson shepherded.
It was a lot different in atmosphere to what the reserve grade competition was. And then around the ground, and I sort of saw these blokes close up for the first time, like Francis Burke and Kevin Sheedy and Kevin Bartlett, and sort of thought, well, I'd like to get an autograph. Rather than a kick, I'd rather get these guys' autographs. But as the game unfolded, it was just I suppose it was just another game, and they were the opposition.
Andy Wilson goes in after the ball. Can he take it away? Unable to do so at the moment. Picked up very quickly by Watson.
Kick just wide at the centre of the ground. Watson going for a hand pass. He's found Hurd. Back to Watson. Comes to Fletcher once more. He gets his kick as he's unloaded. Oh, great mark. Taken for Essendon by Watson.
And so Watson had arrived at Windy Hill. Little did he know then, but he was to develop into an important link in a very special chain that was set to make its own mark on the Bombers' history.
Hand pass out. Oh, it's good players. Watson now breaks away from that hand pass from Stoneham. He can run in towards the goal. He can line up the goals from about 35 metres out. Oh, magnificent goal by Watson.
Been dangerous, but Timmy Watson's there. Watson looking for a hand pass to Carman. That's successful, but Browning's there. Watson back again.
She puts the ball down. He runs straight past Watson to Watson, and Watson goes in to bring up his second goal.
Hurried kick back over the centre half forward position. There's Watson. He's up again. Watch this fella go. Look at him running to an open goal. He fires. It's the good one too, right? Oh, that's a mark to Watson. He won't waste his time. He goes off the mark very quickly. What sort of pace is he used too as it goes down there? A nice mark to foul, and he streaks away from his opponents. He balks, fires for the goals, and that's a beautiful goal.
This by Robbie McGee. A hand pass across from Madden to Tim Watson. Watson now makes the difference. 1 point.
He goes for the big punch. He's done pretty well against Vanderhaar. And there's Timmy Watson going for another one of his runs, and this fella can really move. Away again by Green. Down it comes here again. We've got Timmy Watson. A snap for goal. Is it coming around enough? It is. What a beautiful goal by Timmy Watson. That's goal number 4. It's brought the Essendon crowd to life.
But it all took time, and there was plenty of heartache for the young Bombers, as Tim found out in his first final, the 1979 elimination match against Fitzroy.
And it's full points. First score of the game from the boot of Max Richardson.
There's a chance for Merrigan to put it Fitzroy forward, and a great mark by McMahon.
We went into elimination final with a team that probably resembled Dad's army. I mean, the prerequisite for being a member of this side was actually you had to have a broken limb or you had to have your knee in a cast. And I mean, it's little wonder we were belted in that game by Fitzroy at Waverley Park. And so that was, I can remember the excitement of actually thinking, oh, I'm playing in the finals. And I can remember the enormous build-up in the rooms before the game. And I can remember the streamers. I can remember the excitement on the committeemen's faces, and sort of the reliving of their own careers and the day. And that was about where it ended.
So Bernie Quinlan from 70 metres out, just about. He's going to put it up long to Beecroft, or hopeful for that anyhow. No, it's gone longer than that. He's going to run through. It's gone, a goal. It is a goal.
Beautifully taken aside by Robert Walls. He has all the time to straighten up.
It was a bitter pill for Watson and his teammates to swallow. He did, however, receive some consolation, winning the first of 4 Best and Fairest awards.
This will be close, I'll tell you that. How much closer do you want them?
But while Watson was becoming entrenched at Windy Hill, the man whose Guernsey he inherited was given his marching orders. Coach Barry Davis was dumped in favour of a cunning former Richmond back pocket by the name of Kevin Sheedy. And just as Sheedy was a no-frills player, so he was as coach. And it certainly came as a shock to the easy-going youngsters at Windy Hill.
Well, with the effort that I have in mind, I'm quite sure that we won't be far away from success.
He turned our club around because Barry Davis was a great coach. I really enjoyed the time he was coach, and I wore his number, and I think he had a special interest in me as a player. But Sheeds arrived, and he totally transformed the place from day one. He turned up in early October, which was just unheard of at our club, because guys really didn't want to put their runners on before Christmas. He had the scales out and he was weighing, having everyone weighed and all these sorts of things, and we were sort of thinking, what's going on here? I mean, why are we being weighed? It's not as if it matters if you weigh 13 stone 7 or you weigh 13 stone 8 about playing football. And then he said, okay, we start training next week in October. And you can imagine how excited the players were about that prospect. And so we did. We started training 5 nights a week in October. And I'm talking hard training, in fact, a lot harder than what we train today. It was totally unscientific, but it was training. And the commitment was there, and he bought us, the club had to buy us all our own football, and we had to do all these sort of football exercises with our hands because, he had wanted to be a coach for a long time, and he'd stored up all these ideas about how he wanted to go about his coaching career. And I think that he couldn't wait to get started, and he wanted to show us everything, by Christmas time. And we trained incredibly hard up until Christmas time. It was hard, and I think it toughened us all up, and it made those that thought that playing football was sort of just an extension of their country days, sort of suddenly sit up and take note. And I think we all sort of took it a lot more seriously from there on in. Look, I think his greatest attribute as a person is he's a great loser. Not that he likes to lose, but he's a great loser, and he's a very, very positive man. And I think that he's been he's been lucky because our club's stuck by him too, and he's stuck by the club too. But what I mean is, clubs historically have given a coach a period of time to perform, and if they perform in that time, which he did, he was there. We won the premierships 84, 85. Then we went down on a little bit of a spiral. And they stuck by him, and he built it back up again, and we got into the grand final in 1990. And we lost that again, and then they've given him another chance after that. Now, historically, clubs have chopped coaches at those times because they thought, well, look, we didn't win it. Let's go out and find ourselves someone else. And a lot of those decisions have been based purely upon emotion, rather than looking at it clinically in the light of day and making a business assessment of the person you've got in charge. And I think our club need to be commended for that because they have kept stability within that area, which I think permeates through the rest of the club. And I think that's and I think that he's been adaptable, he's been able to change, he's been innovative, He's not really a conservative coach. I think that he's always looking to improve himself. He never plays safe. I don't think he plays safe. I think that that's helped a lot of the players develop as players too.
And after a long, demanding summer, it appeared Sheedy's philosophies were set to pay handsome dividends.
And there was a wave of excitement that had swept through the club pre-season. We'd beaten Carlton in a practice game for the first time, and I can still remember it was at Skinner Reserve Oval in Sunshine, and I was injured. I broke my ankle pre-season. I was watching the game, but everybody was just totally in raptures after the game because we'd beaten Carlton, and they were one of the strengths of the competition at that time. And so we entered the season proper in this positive frame of mind.
And coming downfield is Watson. Load a bit of weight to the situation, a left foot kick and a goal.
But that positive attitude was hardly sighted in the first 5 home and away matches. They lost every game, and things were getting desperate at Windy Hill.
We weren't losing badly, but we were still losing. And, I think what actually turned it all around was that Sheeds actually threatened to put his boots back on. I think that all of a sudden the players thought that maybe we better start winning some games. So we went into this, and then when we started, we got this the winning sequence going, and we won game after game. I think we had 16 in a row during the day series.
Now for Watson, and look at him go. He kicks the ball high, doesn't gather much distance. Andrews comes in, flies, grabbed by Terry Danaher. He's grabbed, he straightens up, fires. There's a go now. And he's got the mark, Watson. And can this fella be a match winner? A lot resting on his broad shoulders at the moment. And we're about 15 and a half minutes into this last quarter. He fires, and that's a goal.
At that time, the Foster's Cup Series, well, I think it was the Escort Cup then, was being played mid-season. And so you'd sort of front up for the Saturday game, then the Tuesday night game again. And Waverley was in terrible condition. We'd had a really wet winter, and so it was very boggy. And we went out there, and I think there was something like 50 or 60,000 people at the night final. And the Essendon people have been starved of any sort of success for so long, and they were out in numbers. And I think it was a bit of a turning point in the time that I was there, because all of a sudden, we won this finals game, and people started to believe that things were changing.
Fans wanting a 15-metre penalty.
Starting to look dangerous now, Peter.
They still can't get the goals on the board, though, can they, Lou?
No.
McClure from the back. Skipping over Rowers. Watson racing into goal, shoots, and has put it through. Oh, what an opportune comment. Listen to the crowd. Listen to that crowd.
I just think that at that time we sort of got a different attitude within the club, this winning attitude, and the fact that people were talking about us being a good side, and there was still some sort of there was still doubters out there amongst people, but all of a sudden they started to change their opinion of us because we got into this game, and even though it was a night game, it was still the stakes were still pretty high, and Carlton were very keen to beat us, and it was just a great win.
Taken out of it by Fowler, who goes with a long kick up towards full forward. Murray is there for Richmond, can't complete the mark. Here's another one to Watson. Now will the ankles stand up to it? He can't hardly turn, but he's kicked it.
Satori's there, ducks back, has the ball knocked out of his hands. Fowler gets it across to Mahaja. Mahaja over the top to Watson. A goal coming up as Timmy Watson puts it through.
Out it comes to McConville, onto Montgomery. Off the ground, Watson. Best player last week and shaping up again in that regard. Watson from left half forward, puts it high, looking for Bandahari, doesn't let him down.
The hand pass to Williams, in a bit of trouble, he's lost it.
Not because he was one of the greatest players I've ever seen, but for someone so slow, he was rarely tackled. And
it's got to say something about the man, doesn't it?
It has to say something about the man. It has to say something about his manoeuvrability and his evasive skills. But I've never seen so many blokes sort of short and stride with the appearance of someone. And Ron just had this. Ronnie's he's just a great bloke, Ronnie Andrews. He's just a great bloke, and he was a tough, hard man, but a real character of the game at the same time.
Chance, big fella Walsh taken off the back that time by McCarthy. Hawthorn looking good at the start of this match.
From the wreckage of the '83 grand final blossomed a team of rare resolve, which steamrolled its way towards another grand final. On the way, though, they had to overcome the old enemy, Hawthorn. Their first finals meeting, the second semi-final.
Down across the centre at the moment. Folds, that was a shocking kick. Folgers kick up towards half forward. Danaher, good fist away by Mew. Watson, Clark. Danaher in front, can't take the mark. Madden, oh, lovely knock on to Izzard on the goal.
Great play by Madden. Knocked out by Madden, grabbed here by Baker, a hand pass out to Danaher. This looks dangerous, a shot at goal, it'll be good. It'll be a goal. So there's 7 points in front.
McCarthy in front has it punched away from him. Essendon doing nothing wrong at the moment. Russo to Di Pierdomenico. He's certainly trying. Di Pierdomenico's kick is close, it's a goal, Bertie.
Madden couldn't hold that. Danaher spins out of the pack as a hurried shot, Watson. Oh, he's down, but he'll get the penalty, but doesn't matter. He's well in front. Robertson copped him, and he's not too sweet with this Essendon crowd.
There was much in it anyway. I don't think it worries Watson. I'm sure Watson will let him see what's happened. It's gone right through for a goal, but it was great.
Duckworth in the front posse goes to the punch. He's beaten Matthews there as it comes out to Di Pierdomenico. A hurried shot at goal. Oh, I think he's put it through for a goal. Yes, he is. That's his fourth. And the Bombers go back into attack. Good plays. He gets around Robertson. A hand pass coming over to Watson. A long shot up there. Baker's got the sit coming in there as he goes after the ball again. Now he'll turn and fire. This looks dangerous. It'll be a goal. Going down that time was a little Thompson. Breaks clear, drives the ball up, and Izzard's got the mark. But he's a fair distance out from goal. And Izzard's already kicked one goal. He's gone for a pass. And Timmy Watson's got the mark about 45 to 50 metres out from goal, directly in front. A point the difference. The kick is on its way. It's a high one. It's a pretty good one. Now it's touched on the line and scores a dead level.
The goal.
A goal. The game resting on the shoulders of Rodney Eade as he comes in for the kick.
There it is. The siren's gone. It won't matter.
And there's the goal, and Hawthorn have won. They go into the grand final for 1984. The final scores at the MCG.
Sheedy drove us very, very hard in '84 as a team. We trained really, really hard again, as we always had. But I just think that deep down it was just eating away at him, and we just attacked. We attacked the year. And we played them in the second semi, Hawthorn. We'd just been beaten. It was one of the great games probably in the history of football. And I think we all believed that if we could just get another chance at them, then we could probably beat them.
A crowd of just under 93,000 saw the Bombers manage only 5 goals in the first 3 quarters. Their nemesis, Hawthorn, led by 23 points at 3-quarter time. But the skeleton of '83 was about to be buried.
And I think we all went in there at that 3-quarter time huddle believing that we were getting on top of Hawthorn. Although we hadn't put the score on the board, we kicked fairly inaccurately, and we went into the 3-quarter time huddle, I think, as you said, with 23 points down. But I just think that we all sensed that we were getting on top of them during that quarter. And all we needed to do then was to kick goals. And I remember Sheeds, saying, look across at the other huddle when we weren't that far apart on the MCG. And he said, look, all the Hawthorn players, they're sitting down. Jeans is sort of berating them. We've got them on the run. And I think we all sensed that anyway. And I think we all believe that. And then he said, all we need to do is kick a quick goal after 3-quarter time, and we'll be away. And of course, Leon Baker kicked a goal, I think, in something like 15 seconds of that last quarter. And I think we just sensed that, that it was our turn. And then all through that last quarter, we sort of believed that we were going to win.
They're full of running. There's Weston again with a hand pass. Coming over to Watson. This could be another goal. It is. Oh, they're killing him. 92.
Donnell knocks it onto Merritt, or trying to find Merritt, but Watson's there instead. They're running right away. There's another one. If he's accurate, I think he's dobbed it. It's Essendon's flag. No doubt about it. Essendon winning their first flag since 1965, 74 to 98, a difference of 24 points in favour of Essendon, and Hawthorn won't be winning back-to-back flags. 24 possessions to Timmy Watson, and Hawthorn really looking a tired side, Lou, aren't they?
Certainly tired now, but full marks to Essendon. They've plugged away all day.
Number 32, Timmy Watson.
At the end of '84, there were whispers that this was one of the great Essendon sides. By the end of 1985, those whispers had become a roar. The Baby Bombers tag was gone, replaced by a ruthless combination. They did as they liked.
With a hand pass over to Harvey, back to Watson. This looks dangerous over there to Wesard, a goal for sure. It's the full forward position, punched out that time. Oh, beautiful pick-up by Watson. A snap and goal, that's not a bad one either. I think it beat you and bounced back. Is it a goal or not a goal?
And a half. A hand pass to Harvey. On to Watson. Watson towards goal. Another whipper. And Watson brings up his second. And the Bombers go further ahead.
Oh, waiting down beautifully was Williams. Here they go. Timmy Watson can draw the player, then fire towards goal. Oh, thank you, Timmy!
Has a go now, but backing up well. Here's Thompson, a hand pass, coming out to Wesard on his own there at half-back. Another one coming over to Nobby Clark. A long hand pass, a chance now for Weston, but he juggles the ball, he fumbles. He can't pick it up. Oh, good hand pass, finally over to Watson at centre-half forward, Borks. A long shot at goal. This could be the killer. It's a beautiful kick by Watson. And a goal. Magnificent play.
Put on your glasses. There are.
Wood sees a kick go forward to Watson, and Tim should just about give it across to Terry Danaher to goal, which is exactly what he does.
And they were led by one of the game's greats. A laid-back son of a farmer from the Riverina, or as the legendary Jack Dyer would say, the Riviera, Terry Danaher, or TD. Didn't say a lot, he let his deeds do the talking. But you can bet he had a few words with Tim after this hand pass, which had its own HBA tag.
It was just it was a terrible handball, but as always, Terry was calling for the ball. I mean, he was one of the most dangerous players to play around, Terry, because he was constantly using my back as a launching pad for taking marks that he shouldn't have been going for. Even if you're playing on the half-back flank, he was likely to be down there trying to mark the kick out from the full back line. He tackled me once at VFL Park. I was heading towards goal in the forward pocket and he just grabbed hold of me. The umpire blew the whistle but didn't know what to do. Didn't know whether he should pay a free kick against me for holding the ball and then award the free kick to Terry or not. And all he said was, "Oh, Jesus, mate, I'm sorry." And then one day I played in the back line with him, and Hawthorn were kicking goal after goal. You know, I've been shifted down the back line. He was playing centre-half back. And he just caught my eye as the boundary umpires was taking the ball back to the centre. And he just said to me in his laconic way, "Geez, she's getting busy down here, isn't she, mate?" Which was the understatement of all time, but that's him. He's the guy. And I feel very fortunate. I feel very fortunate for the career I've had, but also to meet, you know, some of those great, because they're great. Not only have they been great players, like Simon is a great man, Terry's a great man, Gary Folds, who also played 300 games at Essendon, is a great man too. And there've been, I mean, there's so many others too, but I think probably one of the greatest things about our club and the stability of it as a club has been the fact that we've had these great men who've been great role models. I mean, I couldn't think of anyone better to have in a club for my son to walk into and want to emulate than Terry Danaher, because from day one, he'd have the right attitude. He'd be looking at this bloke thinking, well, you know, if that's what it takes to be as good as Terry Danaher, that's what I have to do, then that's what I'll do.
Almost straight to Matt though, and here's the danger man, Watson. An explosive speed he has, gets on his gas, and away it goes. Another goal to Essendon.
And it was Danaher who led the Bombers to back-to-back flags. Again, it was their arch-rival, but this time, in front of 100,042 fans, Hawthorn copped a belting.
Teammate Simon Madden. Big pack of players down there. It rebounds to Watson. He has a...
Watson, Handley runs into 3-4 Essendon players. Watson with brilliant play. Gets around an opponent, then goes for a short pass. Over it goes to Elshaw. Back there again towards Elshaw. Kicked off the ground by O'Halloran. Coming out to meet it as Watson. Shows a lot of pace. Too much for Langford. Goes for short pass to Merritt. And he's got the mark.
No, great tackle, Kevin Walsh. Madden throws it out to Watson. Nothing for that. Hawker slung. Ball in towards centre field. McCarthy gets it on to Schwab. Schwab's left footer up towards Timmy Watson, standing there on his own, takes the easiest of uncontested marks.
Number 32, Vice Captain Tim Watson.
I think we had then developed a great deal of confidence in each other, and over the years through the recruitment they'd put together a very good solid mix of players. I don't think, look, as a player, I think you always feel that even though you might be playing a lower side, that, you know, something might go wrong and you might lose, so I never felt that we were invincible.
2 successive premierships and the players doing their lap of honour.
Things couldn't have been better for Watson. His second grand final medallion and his second best and fairest award. While football, though, can be kind, it can be very, very cruel. After an amazing injury-free run, Tim Watson suddenly discovered how cruel it can be, as he fell to a footballer's worst nightmare, a knee reconstruction.
Well, you know, it was really strange because during that pre-season, I can remember one day I was running around, you know, down at Glen Maggie, sort of thinking about, you know, how lucky I'd been throughout my career, and you know, how I'd never had any serious injuries. And then, you know, like 3 games into the season, I do my knee and I'm going to be out of action for sort of a whole year. And I think, well, look, that was a terribly low point for me. I was, you know, I sort of spent about 10 days in hospital, and I came out and I was still in a lot of pain, and I think I lost something like 2.5 stone during that time, purely because I felt ill and I couldn't eat. And then, but I think you still think, well, it's just a matter of time before it'll, you know, I'll be right and ready to play again. And then I had sort of complications after that. So there were times when I really started to believe that maybe I wasn't going to get back and play. But I think that, you know, after every sort of setback, there was a bit of disappointment, and then there was a sort of a bit of a ray of hope, and it was just a matter of doing some more rehabilitation and some more physio, and then I got started again.
That, I mean, did you ever consider quitting?
Oh, no, look, I never considered quitting because I was only, look, I was only 24 or 25 at the time. I was still very young. I played a lot of football to that point, but I actually felt a bit cheated because I think as a player, you play your best football sort of between probably 23 and 27. I think, you know, like physically, you're coping better at that stage of your career, and with experience and speed and that type of thing. So I probably felt a little bit cheated that, see, I think I missed something like 36 games with my knee and different problems that I had with it. So it was really nearly, you know, 2 whole seasons of football that I stood out of. You know, at the end of 84, 85, a lot of the players were starting to think, well, you know, what now? You know, we've had great success. We've worked hard for our success, but maybe we're not as, you know, as prepared to work as hard again. And I felt that there was a sort of I think that the whole place became very complacent. I think that as a club we had a lot of success at that time, and there was sort of a bit of complacency about the place. And I thought the danger signs were there during the pre-season, but we got off to a pretty good start. We won our first 3 games, and then, you know, things started to go horribly wrong.
Alvin there with Chris Danaher, and charging onto it, Watson.
And how right he was. After 3 successive grand finals, the Bombers battled for the next 3. They did appear briefly in the finals, but the only personal high point for Watson was a third Best and Fairest trophy in 1988.
Over the top, Clark. Jamie Turner under pressure. Great interception, Watson. Look at the dasher go. Timmy Watson inside 50. Goes long with the left foot. First goal to Essendon.
Oh, he's been outstanding. 14 kicks and here his 15th kick and 14 hand passes. Let's see if he can put it through. Beautiful looking kick on the left. And he has put it through.
Oh, but a chance for Clark. Off he goes to Hawker. This should be an Essendon goal coming up here. Watson had to wait. Gets around Sheldon. Watson for goal and kicks it.
Despite the Bombers' disappointing performance, the individual honours still came his way. State selection was a highlight, but while performing admirably at the highest level, one of Watson's great regrets was not being given a go by Victorian selectors.
Well, it's one of my great disappointments, actually, that I missed out on state games. I don't think the state selectors had a very high regard for me as a player. And I know they didn't because, I mean, Sheeds obviously spoke to them and then, you know, he was fairly candid about what they thought of me as a player, which really hurt me, and I felt very disappointed in their assessment because obviously I thought they were wrong, and I knew that if I was given the chance then I would have been able to perform, but there was times when I was left out of the side and not played, and I suppose that really annoyed me, but I was really desperately keen that the last couple of times I played for the state I was named in the better players, which meant, look, it meant a lot to me. It meant more than people would understand to me because, as a player, you have a lot of pride and we've all got an ego and you want to get on the stage where it's supposed to be the toughest place to perform and then perform and be recognised for performing. And I was desperate towards, in my last two state games, I was just desperate to play for Victoria because I felt that an injustice had occurred throughout my career.
Punches it away, but waiting there is Tim Watson, a hand pass to Harvey, back it'll come to Watson, this is danger for Carlton. Watson sprints.
While he may have thought himself hard done by the state selectors, those in the know out at Windy Hill thought differently. Watson was appointed captain of the club, succeeding TD, who completed a successful 6-year stint as Sheedy's right-hand man.
Watson, kick around his shoulders, unbelievable!
Leading from the front, Watson tasted finals football once again, only to stumble in the preliminary final against a rampaging Geelong.
With him is Buse. Past him, Watson shows pace. Great play by Tim Watson, that's the sort of thing he can do. And he shoots it towards goal. What a reply! 3 minutes left. He goes for the pass into the pocket. The bounce awkward for Bailey. It's okay for Watson. The kick by Watson's a goal!
Despite that humiliation, the new skipper collected his 4th best and fairest, but he still yearned for that one moment all league captains dream of, holding aloft the Premiership Cup. And Watson's dream looked set to materialise as the 1990 season unfolded. That was until injury again shattered his dream.
His left
knee's gone, Pete.
Oh, he is in agony, the Essendon champion.
Look, it was a strange year because it just felt like a different final series to us, and how I sort of kept remembering back to our 84 and our 85 years and how we'd gone into those final series and we were full of enthusiasm and we were full of confidence. But this final series was just so different. We went out to watch Collingwood play the West Coast Eagles, and Peter Simic had that kick and missed the goal, and we'd already left by that time thinking that we'll get to beat the traffic, because we went out as a team in the bus, and we're all sort of sitting there listening to the call of the game, and there was just this amazing feeling when the game ended in a draw that everyone just sort of sat there on the bus and nobody said anything for probably a minute or two, and then it was just disappointment knowing that, okay, we had to wait another fortnight now before we came back out and played. And there was lots of us that needed games at that time. We really didn't need to put back our finals campaign another week. And I think that we lost a lot of momentum at that point as well.
Yeah, just going back and the reason why you needed those games, Sheedy did some strange things, didn't he, prior to that? I know that the 4 Danahers played, I think it was against St Kilda, a number of players were rested. It was a somewhat different build-up towards that final series.
Well, yeah, look, I don't know whether or not anyone was really rested. I think that players might have been injured at that last game, and I don't know how. Look, I really can't recall how serious those injuries were. I know that he was very keen to give the four Danaher brothers the chance to run out together, and it was probably a great, you know, it was a great PR type coup for the club at that time. But I don't look. Knowing Sheeds, I don't think that he would ever jeopardise the team's chances of winning finals game by doing something like that. I mean, winning means far too much to him and always has meant far too much to him. But I just think that it was just one of those final series where we just didn't. Well, we probably weren't meant to win.
In up over the top, Starcevic. No one can break clear. A tap to the advantage of Dacos. Look at the gather. The right foot snap. This is a miraculous kick. Diving on the football, the Collingwood defence trying to keep it in. Kick by Watson. Up towards full forward. No mark. Punched away. Now Kickett gets his right foot to the ball. It's bounced through. Miraculous goal by Kickett.
Can't do so. Russell picks it up, heads in towards the pocket. Over the head of Thompson it goes. Dacos, this is where he's at his best. The Mustard. Breaks to shore again. The skipper gives it to Barwick. On to Banks. Dennis Banks caught. Back to Barwick. Doug Barwick shoots and goals. Collingwood are home.
Things fell into place for Collingwood. They played their best football of the year throughout that final series, and we just didn't get anything happening. And I remember the Thursday night before the grand final, and I just couldn't believe the lethargic way we set about our training. And I called the players together and sort of spoke to them about the fact that, look, you know, this is the most important game for us for the year, but it was just as if we're just a tired unit, and we couldn't muster the enthusiasm to go on, which is, I mean, it's a remarkable thing to say, I know, because it is the biggest game of the year, but we just looked like a tired, sore, sorry lot of players, even in the week leading up to the grand final.
The captain included. I mean, you had the opportunity to do something you hadn't done before, and that was, as captain, raise a premiership cup in front of 110,000 fans. How did you feel?
Well, I felt pretty fresh because, you know, I'd missed a lot of that football towards the end of the year. But I think that, I think that it probably might have been difficult for them to handle the players, because we had a lot of players that needed extra work, but we probably had a lot of players that needed a lesser amount of work just to freshen them up for the finals, because they'd been through the whole year and done it pretty tough. And maybe we didn't handle our players as well as what we could have in terms of freshening them up for that final series. Sheeds asked me to meet him after the grand final in the morning at the old Melbourne Motor Inn about 7:30, 8 o'clock, and because, you know, I was obviously disappointed, and he said to me, look, you know, you're not considering it retiring at this stage, are you? And I said, well, I don't think it's a great time to retire anyway after you've, but, you know, I feel pretty disappointed. And he said, look, you know that if you retired now, you'd always be remembered as the captain of the Essendon team that lost to Collingwood in the grand final. And I didn't say it to him, but it was sort of going around in my mind thinking, well, you know, would that be any worse than being remembered as the coach of the team that lost to Collingwood in the grand final?
Watson. Typical Watson aggression, and look at the kick. Look at that goal.
The following year, the Bombers struggled to recapture their 1990 form and stumbled into the finals, but only for a very brief time. Another elimination final loss, this time against Melbourne, and the margin, 38 points.
Caught by Watson, dispossessed, Hills has a chance, handball, Watson has a big chance, from 25, kicks the goal.
Left-handed hand pass down to Danaher, creating some space at half forward. Not a long kick, won't quite make the distance. Somerville the big fly, Cuthbertson, the hand pass, Watson kicks a goal! The numbers have been Melbourne's way, and that's continuing. Arshold in towards full forward, and a mark taken by Lovell. He has a pot shot and puts it through for his...
With the disappointing finals campaign over, so came the end of an era. Within 12 months of each other, Tim Watson and ruckman Simon Madden decided it was time, while a reluctant Terry Danaher, who just wanted to play forever, headed back to the bush and the Wagga Tigers.
I retired because I lacked the motivation to keep going and playing. And I was really sore. I had a lot of injuries that had been piling up over the last couple of years I played. I had chronic sort of back, hamstring injuries. I'd had a reconstruction on my wrist. I needed another one on my other wrist. And I was just sore, and mentally and physically. I was tired and drained, and I just didn't have the motivation to keep going.
See, look at that face on television. It's nearly as good as his face on television.
I don't know. As you know, one of the most important things...
Yeah.
While Watson was the consummate professional on the field, he tended to lapse into moments of comedy when his time came in the media, particularly television.
What have you got?
Well, I've got a bit of everything here.
Come on.
OK, the makeup lady at Channel 7 says I don't need lipstick, but I'm sure it would look better.
One of his finest performances was on the ABC's Live and Sweaty.
And the eyebrows have been done nicely. Are they natural, or have you had them?
No, I've been combing them. Yeah. I actually like that grandmother look.
You like this
lipstick.
one?
Lipstick.
You do it, you do it.
Yeah, that one. You know, and the grandma's...
But go back on television.
Now, I don't know why people wouldn't take me seriously.
OK, and now we cross down to the boundary line. How's it going?
Thank you, Sandy. Well, it's been a terribly torrid game here. At three-quarter time, Malcolm Blight was very distressed about some of his players. He kicked me off the ground, Sandy. I've got no idea why. All I was doing was standing there trying to listen to what they were saying.
Now we're all joining in this song. Timmy Watson.
I don't
Watson.
No, you really...
Timmy Watson.
No,
Timmy
I've done enough. I've embarrassed
Watson.
myself enough.
Timmy Watson. Timmy Watson.
After seeing that, it's hard to believe Tim doesn't see himself as a comedian.
Now, Tim.
Sam.
Son, I mean, I can't keep up with the mail about the hair. I mean, if you've ever looked more ridiculous before, you look absolutely stupid tonight. What the hell's wrong with you? Could you get the hair cut?
My tie?
Seriously. Your tie? No, your hair. I think if you actually took the frown off your face and had it clipped back, mate, you might improve your actual standing. Oh. You've done it.
I'm not a comedian. I'm not even a particularly funny person. But I think I don't take myself too seriously. And by doing those sorts of things, you're not taking yourself seriously. You know, I think that's what football's got going for it that perhaps tennis and some of the other sports haven't. Is that we're able to, the people are able to see the players as they are, and we get a lot of the personality of the footballers coming across in the game itself and off the field again. And I think that's why football enjoys a great popularity with the people, is because they're actually able to relate to the players because of it. Well, I've really enjoyed the football show. I think that, look, the footy show is a little bit like Essendon last year. When they started out at the commencement, they didn't know that it was going to be a great show or it was going to be a popular show. I suppose great and popular are two different descriptions, because it's probably not a great show, but it's a very popular show. And I think that what it's done, it's all in the timing though too. That we haven't had something like that. We've had contemporary players actually on the screen talking about the game fairly candidly too, and no footage, so it's meant that you've had to have the talking. And I think that that's something that people have appreciated, that they know that it's live, it's not really contrived, it's spontaneous, and they see a bit of each player's personality. It sort of takes them, I suppose people watch it because of the fact that it takes them behind the scenes a little bit.
While seeing another side of the game through the media, Tim was again drawn back to the game, and surprisingly, the calling came while he was at his Glen Maggie hideaway.
And I started to think for the first time at that time, maybe, but I still had a sore knee, and so I thought, no, I don't really want to go and have another operation, and I don't know that I want to go through getting myself fit enough to play AFL football. And we're actually down here over that summer, and it must have been in February. I'd already started work at St Kilda. Well, I had agreed to start work. I hadn't actually been to their training, and as a skills helper. And I watched Essendon play the Brisbane Bears in a Foster's Cup, and I just saw something that made me want to go back and play again. And I think it was the young talent. I mean, it was the young talent there that was at Essendon at that time, and I actually started to think about me playing again. I'd spoken to Ken Sheldon after this, and he was keen for me to go and play at St Kilda, and they were in fact going to draft me, and then the club. I spoke to the club about it too, and I didn't know whether I wanted to go back to Essendon because I thought that I'd had such a great career there, and I thought that I wanted to play again, but I thought maybe it'd be a great experience to actually go and play for another club and to see something new and different and experience like a whole different environment, like a club environment and different people and a new coach. And so I really said to the football club, I said to Essendon that I didn't want to go back and play there, and that I favoured going to St Kilda. And then we had a meeting at David Shaw's place, our president, and Sheeds was there, and yeah, we hadn't really spoken that much since the article, and even though I didn't sort of harbour any grudges, I didn't know whether he did, and we spoke about it, and it was very interesting. He just sort of said how these things happen, and he respects my point of view, and he just said, look, as a coach, you sometimes you fall in love with your players. He said you fall in love with the players that you see get you through from game to game, and he spoke about those sorts of things. But I was sort of in a real dilemma because I'd given St Kilda a verbal undertaking that I wanted to be drafted by them, and I didn't want to go back on my word. But deep down, I was sort of we were down here when the draft was on, the day of the draft, and at that stage I was unsure what was going to happen. But I wanted to go, even though I said St Kilda and I wasn't going to go back on my word, I was desperately hoping that Essendon drafted me, because they were going to have a draft pick before St Kilda's anyway. And as it turned out, that happened. But I suppose the impetus was seeing this exciting team play, like all these young players play, and it really just rekindled my enthusiasm to go back and restart. Look, I'll tell you what happened. That night that I sat down with Sheeds at David Shaw's place, who's the president of the Essendon Football Club, and there was Roger Hampson there, and they were reselling the club and the talent and all the things that I'd seen for myself anyway. And Sheeds said to me, look, you've got a real chance. If you come back to us, there's a real chance that you'll get to play in the finals again. He said, I don't think this year, which is last year, 93. He said, but 94 or 95, this side is capable of winning a premiership. And they were his words. Now, he was being totally honest with me. He didn't believe at the start of the 93 season that the Essendon Football Club had the chance of playing in the finals. Not winning the grand final. He didn't actually think that they had a chance of making the finals. And so I started, my idea was to play for the 2 years. But in terms of regrets, I was very lucky because one of the changes at Essendon was a new fitness fellow by the name of Danny Corcoran. And Danny was just absolutely marvellous fellow, and I trained with him sort of twice a day for a 3-month period. And without Danny's help, I've no doubt that I wouldn't have come back and had a successful comeback. And look, I knew by coming back and playing that I was putting a reputation on the line.
If Watson was worried about his reputation, he need not have been. His determination to regain peak fitness after an 18-month layoff was only matched by his desire to play again in a successful Essendon lineup. And so Watson was ready. It was a humble return through the reserves, but it was a successful return. And it was completed when the number 32 Guernsey reappeared in round 8 against St Kilda.
4 goals, 5. Marking contest on. Derek King at the back. This could be the sealer. Kicks it, goal. Essendon will win.
After that, Essendon's golden roll just continued. With the Foster's Cup victory behind them, everyone at Windy Hill was suddenly chasing the double.
Can he kick his 5th goal? He steadies, and James Hird has slammed it through for goal number 5.
And Tim Watson, maybe the distance I think will worry him, Robbo, just outside the 50-metre area.
He'd be a chance. Kicks it high in the air. The Blues has got
The opportunity came when they marched into yet another finals campaign, although things were looking shaky at half-time against the Crows in the preliminary final. Down by 42 points, the Bombers staged one of the greatest comebacks in finals football, and Watson sealed the match and a grand final berth against Carlton with some old magic.
Mercury, no, Watson gets around. Forced to kick with the left. It slews off the side of his boot. Centre half back for Adelaide. Very important possession. Watson's got it. Watson goes for goal. Look at this. That will go still. Essendon are home in the preliminary final thanks to a goal kicked by Timmy Watson. Graham Corn shakes his head in disbelief.
I declare Gavin Wanganeen the 1993 Brownlow medalist.
48 hours later, young Aborigine Gavin Wanganeen walked off with the Brownlow medal, the first Bomber to do so since Graham Moss in 1976.
Fletcher to bring it back into play.
Bomber fans may well have kept the champagne on ice because 5 days later it would be required again. Yes, the team that wasn't meant to go anywhere in '93 had literally cleaned up.
Away goes Michael Long. 50 metres out. Still going. 30 metres out. Oh, what play! It may have been touched on the line. No!
Away they go again. Hills will have to be quick. He is with a high kick up towards Somerville territory. Sandwiched between two Carlton players. Bielik. Look at this. Ho-ho! The Bombers are hot.
Excellent play there by Essendon again. Long just backs away. Have a look at this. Take me on, take me on, take me on, he says, and still gets away with it and pumps it to within 50 metres. Here, well inside. Away goes Chris Danaher. Have a look there. Brilliant football, Danaher. Well harassed by Ola Renshaw. Scholl gets his foot to it. Seminole mark. Oh, he drops it. But away goes Wanganeen, the 1993 Brownlow medalist. It goes out to half-back. It bounces beautifully for Long. Long, come and get me, Millimhanner, he says. But Wanganeen's run brilliantly from the back pocket, and his disposal, not quite for Hird. Christou falls over. Hird, handball. Wanganeen will kick a goal. Have a look at this. It bounces inaccurately. Maybe that could have been the play of the decade. It is just putting a stamp on this game, Gary O'Donnell. Quite brilliant around the centre of the ground, and another brilliant kick to the goal front. Spalding couldn't take the mark. Another goal to Essendon kicked by Hird. It's all over.
Sheer excitement. Off to Mercury. Long again. Is this man the best man on the ground? I ask you. To half forward, Wanganeen. He had a shot at goal.
This is fitting, isn't it?
This is very fitting, Robbo. The Brownlow medalist. He won the Michael Tuck medal for being the champion player in the night series at the start of the year. And now he wants to cap it off with a goal. And he has. He has. That may be it. There's the bounce. Somerville, and there's the siren. Victory for the Bombers.
And so Watson returned triumphant. His doubters silenced. The Bombers supreme. But if coming back and winning a flag wasn't enough, Watson, like the trapeze artist without a net, decided to go again. Like 93, the Bombers didn't set the world on fire at the start of 94. But an unforgettable moment for Tim Watson and his family was celebrating his 300th game. Wife Susie, a proud spectator as her family was honoured.
It was quite a big build-up during the week, so Tim was quite nervous, and the kids were really excited about running out onto the field, although I think really perhaps just Job and Billy had any understanding of what it was all about. The others were just going along for the ride. But it was an exciting day, and it was sort of emotional day too. I mean, his mum and dad were down and his grandfather, and it was really a lovely atmosphere. And it was lovely to see the kids all running out with him, so it was really nice.
Now, you must have been pretty proud of him.
Yeah, I did feel proud. Yeah, I thought, yeah, he's done a lot, so it was nice that it was recognised.
Look, it has been difficult, but not to say behind every man there's a good woman, and I've been very fortunate to have such a great mother and wife that Susie's been, and she's sort of, I suppose, she's almost single-handedly brought the children up, and but it's difficult to combine the two. Plus, you know, sort of having a business at the same time. But I always, and I firmly believe that to be a successful sports person, then I think you have to have a fairly single-minded, selfish attitude about what you're doing. And I think that whether you do it consciously or not, your sport has to be a priority in your life. And it's not to say that you don't love your family or you don't want to spend time with your family, but you just know that if you want to be number one or you want to be better or you want to stay at the top, then you have to devote your time to what you're doing.
Lots of times when you think, oh, I'm just sick of, you know, all the commitments, it's just so time-consuming, the footy. But really we've just had to do, I've had to look after the family and Tim's had to go to footy and go to work, so we've just had to really try and make the most of the time we do have.
I mean, in a way, at times, I guess you've been both mother and father.
Yeah, well, there's lots of times when the kids wouldn't see Tim for, you know, days on end, and it wouldn't worry them.
They're only human, aren't they?
So, I mean, they just get used to it though, you know. I mean, if he was around all the time, then they'd miss him if he wasn't there, but they just know that he's not there much, and that's the way it is.
1994 hasn't been easy for Watson. A rare visit to the tribunal and a spate of injuries have tested the resolve of the 33-year-old. Also, in the back of his mind, retirement, but this time for good.
I think that might even be a little bit sad at this time, because I suppose even though I retired, I never thought I was going to play again. I probably deep down felt that if I wanted to, I was going to be young enough to go back and play again. Whereas this time I know that it will be the end of the line. And look, it's not only giving up the number 32. It's the fact that, you know, at 15 years of age, the Essendon Football Club became my home, and probably I feel as comfortable within the confines of the Essendon Football Club as I do anywhere in the world. And I think giving up that part of your life, knowing that it's a stage or a part of your life that you can't relive again, I think that's the sadness of being involved in a football club, walking out again and just sort of going on and probably pursuing a normal life.
Timothy Michael Watson came to Windy Hill as a pimply-faced teenager in 1977. What followed was an amazing journey which should inspire thousands of young country footballers. A journey from nowhere to somewhere. Bomber from the bush left Windy Hill a champion in 1994.
I'm here to tell you about the fantastic Name the Game series from Australian Football Video. Now, there's over 200 games available, including final series, state games, night premierships, and the best home and away matches of the 91 and 92 seasons. Not just the highlights, not just the last quarter, but 100 minutes of top footy action. So pick up your free catalogue at any Brussels store. And remember, footy brings out the best in a person.